So I made a video the other day that I talked about the relationship between a tenant and a landlord. I talk about what to do when you have to go through the eviction process, how to do the eviction process. I talked about how to make sure you choose the right person for your properties. So I made a video the other day that I talked about the relationship between a tenant and a landlord. I talk about what to do when you have to go through the eviction process, how to do the eviction process, and I talked about how to make sure you choose the right person for your property. So today I want to talk to you about, I want to go deeper on the type of person you want to get into your house. And I want to throw this disclosure because anybody could use this and say, well, is that some type of discrimination? You are not allowed to discriminate. This is not about discriminating. This is about getting your best tenant in your property with on paper. This is what you're doing, underwriting the application to make sure you have the best tenant in your house. There's three things that you want to know. There's three things that you want to focus on very, very deeply. One of them is income, okay? You want to make sure that the person that is applying for your house can afford the property. I've seen so many people, so many landlords that rent the property to a friend, a cousin, a neighbor, or whatever. They don't bother to underwrite them. They don't ask them how much money they're making. They don't ask them, is this within your budget? Let's use quick math for a $2,000 house. Let's say the person is making $40,000 a year. $40,000 a year divided by 12, that's about $3,000 and some change. That means that the rental, the $2,000 a month, that is a total of over 50% of your income. That's like 60% of your income goes to the household. And you have to be very careful because if you rent to somebody who is gonna pay, the rent is $2,000 and the income is $3,100. They only have $1,100 of expenses. Think about that. Imagine, and now if they have a car, if they have a $500 payment in a car, that's $2,500. Now they have $600 to spend on food, gas, insurance, and that's when people run into issues with the tenants. They rent to people who cannot afford the properties, and then these people can pay because they want to pay, but they cannot pay, so they have to evict them. And the best way to avoid the eviction process is to make sure you renting the property to the right type of people who can afford. So for a person, let's use the math, for somebody who is the rent is $2,000, you want the rental, their income to be between, I would say between $5,500 and $6,000 a month. That's really sweet spot because that's like about 35% of the debt to income ratio. Now, if they have a car who they're paying $1,000 a month, that brings them up to $3,000. They still have 50% of income to spend on whatever they want. They want to spend it on food, entertainment, everything else. You have to think of all these things. Now, if you rented it to a couple, then it's a little bit different because you will be taking both of their income into consideration. So wife and husband works, you are taking both of their incomes and you're combining them and putting them into the equation. And that's how you are going to do underwriting. And also make sure you are, when they apply in the credit report, it shows what their debt is. You want to make sure that these people are not behind in debt. They don't have an insane amount of debt, because if they have an insane amount of debt, the credit card debt, let's say it's $20,000, and if they've gotten to that point, is why? Because they don't know how to manage money. So this goes back to learning how to manage money. And you want to rent your property to people who can afford it, who can manage money. And you might say, but David, why are these people renting if they have a good income and probably good credit score? Why would they want to rent my property? Well, for a lot of reasons. A lot of people are going through transitions. A lot of people just sold their property. They're going to rent for a year and buy again. Or these people are going to buy in a year, or rent for a year and buy then. That's great news. I understand that you probably don't want to have a turnover every year, but the good news about that is that you know that these people want to buy
a property in a year, and that will make sure that they will pay on time, because they don't want to mess up their credit, because they are ready to move forward. That's one of the best people you're gonna rent with a good income, somebody who can easily afford it. Okay, or they're probably only staying here. They're in the military. They don't want to buy because they're probably gonna get stationed in a year or two. So they're like, yeah, we just want to learn the area. We want to live here for a year, and then perhaps we want to buy. Another thing, the second thing is you want to check their credit score. Okay, when they apply, it blows my mind how a lot of people, a lot of landlords, listen, I understand sometimes you want to do a favor, you want to help people, and you are taking a chance, renting them to somebody who has bad credit. I've done it, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out. So you have to be very selective. And if you are trying to help these people and they don't have a good credit, make sure you take more than 1 month deposit, maybe 2 months deposit. In Virginia, you cannot take more than 2 months deposit. So you got to check with whatever each state, whatever laws they have. But if 2 deposit is the maximum, what you can do is you can try to take not just 2 months, maybe have them pay in advance, have them pay 3 months in advance, and be like, okay, well, if you have that type of money, that means that these people really want your property and they can make it work. So again, you want to check their credit score. I mean, a lot of people use rules. I work with a lot of landlords who they hire me to rent out the properties. I've come across people that they're like, nope, I don't want to rent to anybody with a 620. And there's other people that are like, 650 and up is what we will consider. And they just don't want to go through the eviction process. They don't want to take the headaches, the risks of dealing with people who don't pay. Because let's be honest, if somebody's credit score is really low, that means that they have a tendency of not paying on time. And if they have a tendency of not paying on time, what makes you think they will pay your rent on time? They don't pay their credit card on time. They don't pay their car on time. There's most likely they won't pay on time for your house. So you want to make sure, you want to avoid these. Do your due diligences before you get somebody in the house, because once they're in it, it's really hard and painful to get them out. So you want to do due diligences to make sure that this person stay in the property. This person is the right person for your property. So you will see when they apply, you're gonna see the credit score. You're gonna see their how much money they owe, how much money they how they manage money, how they pay on time, do they have late fees, do they have collections? And if they have collections, you have to take that into consideration. Listen, when I'm helping my landlords, investors who are renting their properties, and then we got these people and they're like, oh my gosh, they love the property, blah, 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 blah. And they apply, then there's like 3 collections. And they're like, oh, I didn't know about that. And the collections are usually big. And you're like, how is it that you knew your credit was bad? Why do you think your credit was bad? It's not, your credit doesn't go bad because you pay payments on time, your bills on time. The credit goes bad because you are not paying on time. So you have to make sure that you are checking on that. And again, if you want to take a chance with somebody with a low credit score or no credit score at all, make sure you take 2 months deposit or have them pay a few months in advance. That gives you a little bit of buffer and a little bit more confidence that they will pay. The third thing is references. You want to make sure that these people have references, whether it's from coworkers, friends, most importantly, the previous landlord. If you cannot contact the previous landlords, that is a problem. That's a red flag. You want to be able to call at least 2 landlords that they live, or if they live in a property for 10 years, you probably don't need to call another landlord. You just need to talk to the landlord or property management and say, hey, is this person, can you tell me about this guy? He applied for my property and he wants to move in December 1st. I want to know, what can you tell me? It says here that he's been living there for 10 years. What can you tell me? And it's like, oh yeah, well, he's a really nice guy, pays on time, no issues at all. Another thing is, or it says, yeah, the person doesn't pay on time. It's always late. We have couple of non-sufficient funds. Yeah, non-sufficient funds, check. So then you're like, okay, so this guy is signing checks and they know he doesn't have money to pay. So that's a red flag. You have to see all these red flags. It's kind of like dating. You see, just because this girl is very hot doesn't mean that it's the right girl for you, because she might have a bunch of red flags, but you just attracted because they offer you to pay 2 months deposit, and they're like, yeah, don't worry, don't check our credit. Here, we're going to pay $100 more. Then you get too excited. And you're like, oh my gosh, $100 more. That's $1,200 a year. You get way too excited in the weeds of how much money you're going to make, and you don't check their, you don't underwrite the application with checking their income, their credit score, and the references. So that's a good one. Also, you want to check the employment. You want to call the employer, and say, hey, I saw this guy apply. How long has he been working with you? 10 years. Oh, 1 month. So if it's 1 month, it's like, okay, what happened to the job? You call the other employer. When people have bad credit, or they have, just let's use the credit example, they use a tendency. There is something that you see in the everyday notions. They start something, they don't finish. They have changed 7 jobs in the last year, and it's like, what is he chasing? Like, oh, he's lived there, now he's looking for another place, and he wants to move immediately because, yeah, the other place they evicted him, so now he needs a new place. So you have to see, there's a saying that says, when people show you who they are, you better believe them. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When you're looking at you have an application in hand, and you're looking at all these red flags, and you said, okay, but this guy is very nice. You have to believe him. That you have to believe what's in writing. You have to believe that what is in the paper is more than what you have in the facial interaction. Now, again, people change. And I'm not saying, oh, well, these people have a bad rep, but they change. They're new people. I'm not saying people do change. And it's rarely, but people do change. And sometimes you want to take a chance. But just know, you're taking a chance on this person. You better have a couple months of expenses for that property before you give these people a chance, because they most likely will make you waste a lot of time and money and effort going to the courts, going through the eviction process. And listen, when people have evictions in their credit, evictions and things like that, again, when someone shows you who they are, you better believe them, okay? Because that means that they are so savvy with the systems that they can go around the systems and beat the crap out of you with using the legal system, because they know, okay, I have X amount of days he's going to do this, I'm going to do this. It's like playing chess. And if these people are professional at taking advantage of landlords, they will take advantage of you too. And again, people change. And you want to judge people with the best judgment, but when you have your $511,000 asset that you bought it to make you money, to help you get financial freedom, you can't really be helping people, taking chances of people. When the airplane, they tell you when the masks come down, you better put yours first before you help anybody. And if this is your first investment property, or 2 or 3 investment properties, and you're working hard to make it happen, to reach financial freedom, and then you cannot afford to be taking chances on people that you perhaps don't know, or people that just come and tell you like a good sob story, or this is the reason why my credit is bad, or this is the reason why my landlord didn't give me a good reference. He was a dick. That's what happens. So you want to make sure that when people show you who they are, you better believe them. You have the application in hand. Make sure, okay, this person has 10 late payments. Why is that? That's a tendency. You have to believe humans are habits. Like, I'm a habit person, okay? I wake up in the morning, I do this, I brush my teeth in a certain way, I make my coffee in a certain way, I go to the gym. That people are happy if people have habits. So if somebody doesn't pay their bills on time, that is their habits. You have to be very careful if you want to rent to somebody. You're taking a chance. And if you're a landlord, if you're a tenant watching this video and you're like, dude, you dated, you're a piece of crap. You just making a video for landlords, so they don't rent to us. Listen, this is the first thing you need to do. You need to get a credit card and start building credit. It's like, whoa, but I'm $20,000 of credit. The system break me. Listen, we live in America. The system is not great. If you want to get ahead, you can get ahead. I don't like the guy, but this is a really good quote. I'm not going to say who said it, but he said, if you were born poor, it's not your fault, but it is your fault if you die poor. And if you're going to sit here and blame the government, blame everybody else, blame the neighbor, blame your parents, why you're not paying your bills on time, why you're not finding the right place to rent because you have a bad credit or because you can't hold a job, that is your fault. That is 100% your fault. And if you want to get ahead in life, you have to improve your habits. If your habit is to pay the bills late, you got to improve your habit and start paying bills on time. Start building credit. Because if you don't have credit, you're not going to be able to rent a property. The most basic need of shelter, you cannot rent because your credit is bad. That is not very good. You live in America, one of the greatest countries in the world. You have so much opportunity and you have blew it because your credit score was really bad and now you can't afford to rent a property. So you can get mad at everybody. You can get mad at the landlords. You can get mad at the government and the president. You can get mad at everybody. But if you don't take matters into your own hands and say, you know what, I'm going to start improving my credit score. In 6 months, I'm going to have my own apartment, my own house. I'm going to rent. And in a year, I'm going to buy my own place. You have to start. Little steps, man. Little steps. Rome was not built in a day. If you are overweight or you are struggling to lose weight, it's almost the same example. If you are $20,000 in debt, you didn't go to bed last night and you woke up and you were $20,000 in debt. It was steps. Things had to happen. Things happened for you to get to the point where you are. And now it's your job, because you got yourself there. It's your job to get out of there. Somebody's overweight. They didn't get fat from one day to the next. They got there because of eating that extra chip, that extra soda, that extra thing. So they have to, the same way they got there, they have to get out of there. Like if your credit score is 500, you have to improve your credit score. You have to start, and it's not going to happen. It's going to take time. And this is what we live in a society now that everything you want it instant. You want it now. You can't. It's going to take time for you to build credit. It's going to take time for you to save for the down payment for buy your house. And stop being mad at the world. People, you cannot be blaming landlords why you're not able to rent a property when you don't have a good credit score. You got to put yourself in their shoes and say, would I rent my house? If this was my house, would I rent this house to myself? And you have to be honest. Look at yourself in the mirror and be honest. And if the answer is no, you need some work to do. So anyways, for landlords, that's what you need to do. 3 things, basic things to check, to underwrite before you rent your property to anybody who cannot, to avoid evictions. Income. Make sure they have a really good income. Make sure the rent is not 50% of their income. Make sure it's between 30, 35, sweet spot. That means that they can easily afford it. The second one is make sure that they have credit. Listen, if somebody has bad credit, it's because it's of bad tendencies. They do bad habits. Their habits are not aligned with what you want. The other one is references. Make sure you talk to the previous landlord. Why is this person moving? Has he changed residencies 5 times in the last 4 years? Make sure you underwrite this to avoid evictions, to avoid all those things. So your life is better. So every month, all you do is you collect rent, you pay your mortgage, and you start building wealth. That's the best way to do it. Do not avoid. The best way is to collect rent, avoid those headaches, and be happy. Be great. And this is David Pena with the Talker Properties. Be great.